Hey there, fellow adult collectors. Welcome back. David Eon here, and today we are going to be cracking open and restoring a graded CGC comic book. Something that I've been asked to do by several of the viewers. I don't do comic related stuff too much, but I've been encouraged to do more of it, and so that's what we're doing today. I do a lot of show tours, and one of the things that I picked up recently was this Strange Tales Annual #1. Not a major key. There's no one famous in this book. I mean, it was done by Kirby and Ditko, which is fantastic. But aside from that, the only thing that makes this a key is the fact that it is a #1. This, as you can tell, is a much older label. As a matter of fact, it was graded in 2001. More than 20 years ago. So there are no grader's notes. All I know is it's 3.5, and looking at it, it's got a lot of wrinkles and creases. I don't know if you can see it there. And it is dirty. And aside from that, the case is already damaged. It was already cracked, and I picked this up with some other books from a dealer at a show that I attended recently, and you probably saw that video. Some of you might have seen that, because again, we film when we go to a comic or a toy show and put it up on the channel. And I was looking for a rescue book, so I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Got a great price on it, well under market value, and I'm gonna go ahead and crack this open. I'm going to bust it open. It's not as dramatic as all that, but it will be easier because it's an older case. The older cases are not as secure as the modern ones, so it's not going to take much to break this open, especially since it's already got a deep crack in it. So we'll break it open. We'll remove it from the inner tray. And then I'm going to read it. You won't have to watch that part. But yeah, I'm going to read the book. And then we're going to get to cleaning and pressing.
Now, first of all, always do these things over a clean surface and with clean hands or gloves. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of using the white gloves. That's entirely at your discretion, whether you use white gloves or you just clean your hands. Some people have preferences. I'm telling you, either is fine. Now, bare hands is good enough for something like this. If it was something with a completely solid colored finish, like if the comic cover was mostly black, I might want to wear gloves, because especially when you get to the steaming and pressing part, you can leave fingerprint marks. Now, this is an older case. This is going to be that hard to break. Really, it's just a matter of giving it a proper twist. And there it goes. It's already busting open. I'm in it. It's not going to be quite as simple as all that with a modern book, but it is literally that simple with something that was graded that long ago. That was remarkably easy. Now, if it was a more modern book, you might have to shimmy up the sides with a screwdriver. And if I get to a point where I break open a book that's been graded more recently, then we'll go over that. But there we go. That's useless now. This is the tricky bit. Now, you notice the card is actually just right there. There's your grading slip. And for the sake of purity of the CGC census or the census of whatever agency you're working with, people usually like to send these in with the book. I don't recommend doing that. Now, I know I just made a lot of people upset. They're like, you got to keep the census pure. Well, I'm not suggesting that you don't, but I wouldn't send it in with the book, especially if that slip is from another company. There's no guarantee that if you broke open, say, a CBCS book and you're sending this into CGC to get graded, if you send the CBCS slip, they might just throw that in the trash. Also, you run the risk of, when you submit this, that whoever it is that's grading it might get lazy on you and just use that as a reference point rather than truly grading the book. Don't think it can't happen. What you can do is save these and mail them in afterwards. So if, you know, I broke this open, if I got this one and if I've got a couple of others, I can stick them in an envelope, mail them to CGC. When they get it, put a note with it. I opened these, sending them in for your census. They'll remove them from the census. You don't even have to put your name on it. You can mail it in. But I don't recommend sending it with the book for the reason that I had explained. Now comes this part, and this is the encapsulation, the interior encapsulation, which is water resistant. I have seen experiments that people have done on other channels, and now you can really see how just grubby that book is. It's very dirty. I have seen on other channels where they have taken these and submerged them in water and left them for a period of time and then took them out and opened them up and the book was dry. So very well done as far as that is concerned. Opening these up can be tricky. You've got to be careful. Most people use scissors to break them open, or an X-Acto knife. You can see where this has been pressed. Turn it this way. You see the line here. All you have to do is cut it above that line, because there is a little bit of space in this tray. Make sure the book's all the way down, and then get a pair of scissors and cut it in between. Now, for safety reasons, the scissors that I'm going to be using are rounded tips. They're not pointed. They're not pointed because I do not want to risk accidentally stabbing or scraping the book. And we'll start right there. Do you see where I am? I'm as close to that pressed edge as I can get. Without getting near the book. Keep in mind also that when you cut these, you're creating a jagged edge. And now that is exposed for the first time. Can you smell that? Can you smell that pulp? Lovely. I'm gonna bow that a little bit because I don't want to try to just force this out through here. Now, if you want to, if you're very careful, you can trim down the sides the same way. Or, and this is why you want rounded edges, you can come in the center and cut a split at least halfway down without touching the book. Do not touch the book. Cut this at least halfway down, and keep in mind you're creating sharp edges because this is thicker than it looks. And you can fold these open like that. Let's put a crease in it. You need to throw it away anyways. And now you have some more space to free this up, and you can get it out carefully. Here she comes, nice and slow, and careful not to scrape against the lip here where you've created somewhat of a serrated edge. And this one is a little bit more tightly fitting. There we go. It's old. The seal just gave out, and that's to my benefit. It's a bit more tightly fitting because it's an oversized book. It's very thick. And now I can go ahead and flip through that. There's going to be archival paper that you're going to want to remove. Let's give it a quick flip. I would also recommend, of course, going through it page by page. We'll take this away. Going through this page by page to look for defects. And also when pressing, you've got to be very careful about the way some of these thicker books are stapled. You see where they are. Just to see if anything is missing or cut out or written in, colored in. And I'm going through this much more methodically and carefully than a professional grader will. CGC is not going to do this. They're going to flip through real quick because they're in a hurry. The pages are actually nice and clean. Maybe there's a minor tear right there. You see that? I saw the serpent that saved the world. See, these look like fun stories. There's a wrinkled page. It's not too bad considering the age of this. And you know there's only like 200 of these in the CGC census. And only a couple in a grade above like 9. Only a handful. The majority of those grades are around the midpoint, like around 5.5, 5.5, 6 is where most of the grades on this are, but there's really only about 200 in the census, if I remember correctly. And there we go. Pretty intact book overall, actually. But as you see, it's got some soiling. And some wrinkles and dents. You see it's sticking out a little bit better there. As I turn it into the light, you can see some creases, some little dents and nicks, especially along the edge there. But we're going to fix that. We're going to fix as much of it as we can with my odd old school method of cleaning and pressing. I do things a little bit differently because I was doing this before there was a CGC, back when I worked with New England Comics in the early 90s. But right now we're going to fade away because I'm going to read this. And then we'll get to cleaning. Okay, so we are back from flipping through and reading some of this madness from 1962. And there's some funny stories in here. You know, they're supposed to be like thriller, suspense, sci-fi kind of stories. And this one in particular cracks me up here. I unleashed Shag upon the world. Yeah, baby. Austin Powers, anyone? But now we're going to go ahead and start doing a little cleanup before we get to pressing. You should always clean it first. Now, I do keep a magic eraser handy. I don't like messing with these too much. A lot of people swear by the magic eraser, but you can actually do a lot of damage to your book with it if you're not careful. It does lift color off. it does streak if you're not careful, and you can rub a spot into your book because this is abrasive. It's got microfibers, but it is abrasive. Also, it's dusty. If I squeeze this right now, dust is going to fly out of it, and you don't want to inhale that dust. It can make you sick. What I usually use is I keep a makeup brush handy, and the makeup brush is really just to gently wipe the book down when I'm finished. I use this on comics and action figures all the time. These fine fibers are not going to leave any marks on your books. And I use a cotton ball, of all things. I know some people use that tacky and they rub it over the book. If you've got an older book, you've got to be really careful with that. But I've had a lot of success actually buffing out soiling marks and dirt and grime with a cotton ball. And it takes some technique. You have to, wax on, wax off. You're going to do circular motions. Mr. Miyagi was right. But don't just grab a book like this and start doing it. You grab a junk book, something that's not worth much, that you don't care about, it's in really crappy condition. Experiment before you get to a book that you really actually want to work with. Now, first of all, I'm going to get some typing paper. Now, why am I getting typing paper? Because of the placement of these staples. See, they're not in the spine, they're through the middle of the book. So I'm going to put this here so that while I work on the outside of the book, I'm not pressing those staples deeper into the cover. You can already see where they are here. And I'm literally just going to take the cotton ball and in a circular motion, in a controlled space, see how I'm holding the book down? Just rub it in a circular motion, just to start picking up that soiling. And you can see I'm already getting dirt on the cotton ball. It's a nice, careful circular motion. And as you experience this, as you get more comfortable doing this, you'll know how much pressure you can put. You'll get a feel for it. That's why I said also experiment on it with books that really don't mean much to you, so that you don't have to worry about like ruining a book like this or some other book that might be really valuable to you. Also, with the cotton ball method, I've been able to successfully remove stickiness from books too, where there's residue from maybe, for example, a price tag or something that's spilled on the book, and you have that stickiness, that gumminess that you see on the covers sometimes. The cotton ball will rub that out completely successfully, which is probably really surprising to a lot of people. Who are like, no way, you can't pick that up. Yes, I can. Try it. Really watch out towards the corners. Really be careful up here, because you don't want to tear one by mistake. It is really easy to accidentally pull a corner off, especially since often they're very worn already. And I'm just going over this really quickly for your benefit, and I'm going to work on it harder in a little while. But I want you to see the technique. And again, this is just a really old school way of doing it. Just rubbing it with the cotton ball in a circular motion inside of a little controlled spot to pick up that years of grime. I did a video previously working with a magic eraser just to demonstrate.
And I can show you a little bit of that on this book as well. Really watch out where you are too. Like right here, there's a little tiny bit of a split, and so you don't want to rub over that split and tear it. Make it worse. But eventually you're going to get the majority of this up. And you can see again, picking up the soiling. And for the sake of argument, we'll get the magic eraser out here in a moment. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here we go with the magic eraser. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to take something like this. You remember these, don't you? I still have a bunch of these old Mylar sleeves that they used to put comics in, top loaders. I don't recommend using these for your comics, by the way, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to place it there. And the reason I'm going to border it like that is because I don't want to use the magic eraser on color, not directly, because it will pull that color out. And I hold this down, spread my hand, and hold that Mylar down, and that way I can see both sides. I can see right through the Mylar to look here. If you don't have that, then just use a backing board, but I like this because I can see. And then you can just rub back and forth to pull that soiling out, watching out for any splits or rips or tears so that you don't make them worse. And when you get to the edge, you don't want to go back and forth, you just want to go in one direction, because you could risk splitting it. And that's the basic use of the magic eraser. And not too hard, not too rough. It's not a race, take your time. Don't have to be aggressive with it. And this particularly is where you're really going to want your makeup brush, because it will produce a lot of dust. I don't know if you can see the cloud coming out of that. And again, you do not want to inhale that dust. It can cause upper respiratory infections. I'm not kidding. Just about finished here. Wanted to make one more quick point about the magic eraser, if you happen to use one. And that is that it can alter the shade of the finish. You know how there's a glossiness to comic covers, and when you use the magic eraser, again, I recommend that you do not run the magic eraser over color portions, because it will pull the color right out of the book. But if you went around the borders, for example, to brighten them up, there'll be a difference in the glossiness. To even that back out, you can take your magic eraser and just kind of lightly go over the book, so that you can help to even that out a little bit without rubbing hard enough that you might pull color out of the imagery. And I just wanted to point that out. And again, love these makeup brushes for cleaning this surface, especially when you get to the pressing part. You don't want any particles on the cover. Anything that fell on here, it's going to look like a crater. If you drop a hair on this, you're going to get like a curled dent. And worse than that, if it's a hair that still has a follicle attached, that follicle will stick. And then you've got to dig that out. So just keep that in mind. But overall, it's starting to clean up really nice. And, you know, I've gone through a couple of cotton balls. You can see I'm still pulling a little soiling out. And that's okay, because that's what we're trying to do, is just clean the book up. And at certain grade levels, soiling isn't going to
affect the grade all that much. It could be I could go through all this trouble and still end up with a 3.5, but it's still going to present a lot better regardless of that. It's not always about the grade. Okay, so this is the press that we're going to be using today, and I recommend getting a heat press with all metal construction. There are some real inexpensive heat press machines. Usually they're for t-shirts, but there are some real inexpensive ones on the market, but they have plastic components. Those will break off and snap, and then you've got a useless press. This one is set for the maximum for this machine, which is 999 seconds, which comes out to about 16 and a half minutes. And I've got the heat level set at about 177. So usually between 170 and 180 in that range is nice and comfy for a comic. And you know how this typically works, although I do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you that, where you can press the book, and when the timer goes off, you flip it and press it again. What I'm going to do first here is just turn it on and let it warm up so that it doesn't start cold. And you see the timer there is beginning to tick off as the temperature climbs. So just want to let it warm up. Also, one other point, make sure that the surfaces you're working with are clean and free of debris. Again, you don't want to press anything into the book. This particular one has a Teflon sheet on the heating elements, but we're not going to press the Teflon onto the book. I don't use Teflon sheets on the book. The reason for that being that you can leave little teeny tiny square patterns. It may not be visible to the naked eye, but you can sure see it with a magnifying glass. And if a grader catches that, they're going to give you a strike for canvassing. Canvassing is what they call that. So you don't want Teflon directly touching your book. Let's move on. Now we are back with our book again, and we are going to again make sure that it is clean. And I like using, as I said, the makeup brushes. I just want to brush it off. Make sure that no dust or dirt or debris has gotten on here. This is a clean towel, and not only is it clean, but I shook it out as well, just to make sure that there's no little specks or dust or debris that are going to get on this book to cause problems. And the next thing we need to do is literally dry clean the thing. We're going to make this book wet. We're not going to expose it to water, but I am going to use a steamer. I'm going to use this steamer, as a matter of fact, which creates a fine mist. I don't like using the bath. A lot of people, they swear by using a bath where they take the tote and they pour boiling water in it, and they got a little platform and they wrap the book in a towel and they go through that rigmarole. I don't like that method for a variety of reasons. Reason number one, there's too many opportunities for an accident. If you bump into that thing or knock it over or create a splash effect, you're going to damage your book. Secondly, you can't control how much moisture actually goes into the book. With the steamer, I can directly control exactly how much moisture goes in here. And that ties in with the use of parchment paper. A lot of people swear by the parchment paper because they're afraid of transference. I've seen transference with parchment paper as well. I just use the standard typing paper, works great for me. I've not had a problem with color transfer. Reason being that most of the time, if there's a color transfer issue, it's because there's too much moisture been put into the book. Way too much. And that happens most often when you're using a steam bath and letting it sit there for hours and trying to gauge when it's ready instead of being able to watch and control it yourself and get it done in a few minutes. I'll point out also that the water that I put in here is purified water. Do not use tap water. There's a lot of chemicals in it. So water that's been properly distilled or filtered or purified is a lot better than getting water out of the tap. Do not get water out of the tap. So we're going to go ahead and start steaming this here in a second. Time to start dry cleaning the book. And I don't know if you can see, there's a very fine mist coming out of here. Very easy to control. I like that. I'm going to start on the back of the book and really just go around the cover. Back and forth. Real easy, and you'll see it start to curl up already, and that's fine. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Make sure you get a steamer that makes a very fine mist so there's no splattering, because you could leave water damage marks on your cover. Also with these older books, particularly one where the staples are set the way this one is, you want to be very careful opening this cover up for the first time after you start to get it damp. This is also the reason why I'm doing this on a clean towel. Because if I had this on a flat surface, that moisture would accumulate on that surface, and what I would end up doing is quite literally putting this into a pool of water. And that would be a disaster. Look, you could be an all-male He-Man to just cut this ad out. See, right here, you want to be careful, because you can see that how this spine is. I don't want that to split away. It doesn't need too much. It probably doesn't really need much of anything in here, just a little bit for good measure. Just lightly go over it. It doesn't need to be saturated in here because there are not creases that go all the way through the book. Just page by page, add a little bit of moisture. I'm not going to use cardboard in here. There's no need for it because of the staple placement. A lot of people think that the reason you put cardboard in the center of the book is to help to keep the book straight. That is not why. The reason that you would put a piece of cardboard in the center of the book is actually to maintain the integrity of the staple placement. You're pushing the staples out towards the outside edge of the book so you don't get a warping that goes this way. You know how sometimes an edge will peek out because the cover is off center? That's what you're trying to prevent by putting cardboard in the center. So if you're one of these guys that's like cutting out an indentation for the staples to fit into because you think that it has something to do with making the book flatter, you're making a mistake. You really don't want to put cardboard on the inside cover either, because with an older book you could split that cover or create a crease that needs to be resolved in another pressing. You'll end up pressing it again to get rid of the crease created by the presence of the cardboard. And there's a nice wrinkle right through here, but that's a factory error. And this is going to take a little bit longer than normal just because of the size of the book. There's so many pages in here. Most of the concentration is going to go into the cover though. That's where the majority of the steaming is going to go. Look at that widow's peak. Almost done here. Like I said, it doesn't need too much. And again, I just like using this method as opposed to a steam bath because I can just control it better. And as you work with books more often, you'll get a feel for this. This book really doesn't need much, and I don't want to overdo it either. Remember, this is 1962. So this book is 60 years old, or just about 60 years old. I come from the shadow world. That one was funny. And always read them. Always read the books. Why not, right? We're just about finished. The press is nice and warmed up and ready to go. And again, I'm going to be putting 2 pieces, I believe, of typing paper between the main pages and the cover on both sides, just so that staple won't break through. Nice and easy here. Again, it doesn't need too much, and that's why I do this. And plus, I'm about done here, really. I'll be finished here in less than a minute. It's a little difficult doing it around the camera. But we are about ready here, and I'm going to put the paper in. A couple of pieces in the front, right up to the edge as close as you can possibly get, and then 2 pieces in the back for the same purpose. And then I'm going to show you something you've never seen. Careful here, because there are a couple of little splits and tears, and I want to make sure they're nice and even. Get in there again, because I don't think that's settled. No, it did not. Okay. There we go. The piece on the outside and slide it in. And then I'm going to put it on this. And what that is actually a clipboard that I have repurposed. Why am I doing that? Because we're pressing the book. And if you are pressing the book, you want to press it flat. And you're not pressing it flat if you're squeezing it down into a piece of silicone. And this is where I throw a lot of people off, and they're like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Spine towards the back. And press. And locked. And when the timer goes off, I'll open it up. And of course, the back of the book is facing up right now. Back of the book up, spine towards the back, in the center. When the timer goes off, I'm going to turn the book. Now, before you don't just turn the book, take a look at it real quick to make sure you didn't make a mistake and bend a corner or something, so that you can go ahead and hurry up and fix that. So we're going to let that go ahead and cook as the temperature creeps back up there, because I had turned it off for a minute. Because these do draw a lot of power, but you see it's already 172, so it'll hit 177 here in a few seconds. We'll flip it,
and then we'll leave it in there. And I'm not going to leave it in there overnight either. A lot of people, oh, I got to leave it in there for 24 hours. Not really. Not really. You can get away with leaving it in there just until it completely cools down. Just a few hours. You know, leave it in there for like 5-6 hours instead of 24. And then take it out. And it should be without any more of the moisture, so you're not going to get any warping, which is why people leave it in there so long. They're worried about the warping mostly. So let's go ahead and let that finish cooking, and then we'll flip it. All right, it's beeping, so it's done. And we could shut it off, or we could open it. And I'm just going to go ahead and pop it open because I want it to stay warm. I'll lift it, lift the handle, and slowly let it up. And I slowly let it up because it can create suction and pull the book towards the back. I don't want that to happen. Right now is when we flip our book. Take a look at the edges real quick. Inside, just make sure nothing got folded or creased. And press it again. And it will automatically go back to its default setting and start counting it down again, which is roughly just over 16.5 minutes. Alright, so it's several hours later after it's cooled down, about 5 hours after total cool down. Again, a lot of people like to leave it in these systems overnight. I don't think it's really necessary. A few hours after it cools off is usually good enough. If you want to leave it in there longer, that's entirely up to you. It's not going to hurt anything. It's at your own discretion. Again, I'm going to release this slowly so that it won't pull anything towards the back. And we're going to lift that out and move it over and take this apart and take a look at it. Back basically at my little makeshift workstation for convenience, because it's hard to do anything in the angle that I was at with the camera previously. Working around the camera is awkward enough, and just take it away. As you can see, it doesn't stick. I'm going to use a board to slide underneath to lift it off. Take the paper out from between. It comes right out, there's no problem. Again, in my experience, when it sticks, it's because it's been oversaturated, not because of the type of paper that was used. And once again, I do not use Teflon because it will leave a mark. If you use there's Teflon in my system anyways, in my press already. It's attached to the press. But if you use Teflon directly against the pages, you risk getting what they refer to as canvassing. And this is about as flat as it's been since it was pressed. There are marks, of course, that are not going to come out, like those reader's creases there are not going to come out. But the indentations, the dings, and other small marks are gone. It's a lot cleaner than it was. Which is basically what we're looking for. We're not going to get a miracle out of a clean and a press. But there is notable improvement. And that's really all I wanted. And now it's ready to go back in. And in some time, some point in the future, many, many months from now, I'll get it back. Because I can't justify paying the
expedited fee. I think what CGC charges an extra $15 to get it accelerated time return. So I'm paying $15 to encourage them to do what they should be doing anyway. I don't agree with that. Unless you just really need it back in a hurry so you can turn around and flip it, which is not my intention. So what do you think? If you have thoughts, do you press books? Did you see anything different here today? What do you think of the process? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section down below. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you got something out of it. Share it if you can. Subscribe if you're new, all that good stuff. Check out some of the other videos. I just want to let you see here it's not stiff either, because that can happen when it's been pressed also, and that also comes from oversaturating the book, where you go to turn it and you feel that stiffness and that cracking almost. You don't want to use too much water, and again, that's why I use a steamer instead of giving it a steam bath. And again, if you give it a steam bath and you're really comfortable with that method, that's fine, whatever works for you. Everybody does things a little bit differently, but let me know what your thoughts are. Check out some of the other videos. If you have not, it's basically a big happy nostalgia channel here. We talk about all things nostalgia, comics, toys, movies, television, music, whatever. And if you would like to see more comic related content, let me know. So if that's it, what more can I say? But thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.